Betrayed by his brothers. Why the Night's Watch turned on Jon Snow. Welcome back, everyone, to the channel where fantasy meets strategy and nostalgia fuels our digital adventures. In the freezing winds of the north, beyond the wall where death wears a crown of ice, one man rose above the broken traditions of the Night's Watch. He was a bastard, a son of no name. Yet he carried the burden of kings. He united wildlings and crows. He faced the White Walkers. He died for what he believed in. But it wasn't the Night King's army that struck the final blow. It was his own brothers. This is the story of betrayal, of duty twisted by fear, and of why the Night's Watch, the very Brotherhood Jon Snow swore his life to, turned against him. This is the story of why the Night's Watch murdered Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. Before we understand the betrayal, we must understand the man who was betrayed. Jon Snow, bastard son of Eddard Stark, grew up in Winterfell with the name, but not the claim. Always on the outside looking in. While Robb trained to be a lord, Jon trained to find his place. He carried himself with honor, like his father. But in his heart, he never truly belonged. When the time came to choose his path, Jon did not choose glory or ambition. He chose duty. He joined the Night's Watch, a brotherhood of outcasts and criminals, sent to guard the realms of men against the dangers of the north. He believed the Night's Watch would give him purpose. He believed his brothers would accept him. But the Watch was not a brotherhood of loyalty. It was a broken institution, rotting from the inside. A brotherhood in name only. When Jon arrived at Castle Black, he was confronted with a harsh reality. The Watch wasn't made of noble defenders, it was a prison. Murderers, rapists, thieves, men given a choice between death and the wall. Discipline was thin. Morale was thinner. Jon, trained by a nobleman and gifted with skill, stood above the rest. And they hated him for it. But one man saw Jon's potential, Lord Commander Jeor Mormont. Mormont gave Jon his trust. And when Mormont was killed by mutineers at Craster's Keep, that responsibility began to fall on Jon's shoulders. Slowly but surely, Jon became a leader. But not through politics. Through action. Through conviction. And it was that same conviction that would cost him everything. The Wildling War. Jon Snow did the unthinkable. He infiltrated the wildlings, lived among them, loved one of them, Ygritte. He broke vows, not just of celibacy, but of allegiance. And even though he returned to Castle Black with vital information, his brothers never forgot where he had been, or with whom. Then came the Battle of Castle Black. Mance Rayder's wildling army stormed the wall. Giants, mammoths, the fury of the north. But Jon stood strong. He led his brothers in a defense few believed possible. They won. But not through strength alone. They won through unity. And then, Stannis Baratheon arrived. With fire and faith, he took control. Jon had proven himself. His enemies had no choice but to admit it. And for that, he was named Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. But the knives were already being sharpened. Lord Commander Snow. Jon's first acts as Lord Commander were bold. He refused to bend the knee to Stannis. He executed Janos Slynt, a former commander and coward, to prove his resolve. He named wildling-born men to leadership roles. He allowed Tormund Giantsbane and his people to pass through the wall, to be saved from the White Walkers. To Jon, it was the only moral choice. To the Night's Watch, it was treason. They saw wildlings as savages. Raiders. Killers. For centuries, the Watch had fought against them. Now, Jon was welcoming them in. Housing them. Feeding them. Protecting them. Jon didn't care. He had seen the White Walkers with his own eyes. He knew the real war was not between wildlings and crows, it was between the living and the dead. But his brothers didn't see it that way. Fear, pride, and betrayal. At Castle Black, fear is currency. And Jon was bankrupt. He trusted the wrong people. Men like Alliser Thorne, who had always loathed Jon for his rise through the ranks. And men like Bowen Marsh, who saw Jon's decisions not as visionary but as betrayal. And then came Hardhome. Jon sailed with a small force to save the wildlings from a massacre. What he saw there haunted him. The White Walkers, the Night King, the dead rising. He returned broken, but alive, with more wildlings under his command. That was the final straw for his enemies. They believed Jon was no longer one of them. He had gone too far. Chosen the enemy. Betrayed the Watch. They convinced themselves that they were saving the Watch by killing its commander. For the Watch, the night was quiet, cold, the air held the weight of death. Jon received a letter, a message from the Boltons, claiming to hold his brother, Rickon Stark. The words burned through him. His eyes filled with fire. He turned, ready to act. But then Ollie came, Jon's steward, a boy he had trusted, raised, protected, the boy whose family had been slaughtered by wildlings. The boy who watched Jon save those same wildlings. Lord Commander, it's from your uncle, Benjen Stark. He's alive. Jon turned, stunned, and then, the first knife plunged into his gut. For the Watch, another blade. For the Watch, and another. For the Watch. Jon fell to his knees, blood pooling beneath him. Eyes wide, lips gasping for air. And then, Ollie, the final knife. The boy Jon saw as a son looked him in the eye, and stabbed him in the heart. Justice. Or fear. Why did they do it? Was it justice? Or was it fear? Was Jon truly a traitor to the Watch, or was he simply ahead of his time? Jon believed the Wall no longer mattered if humanity itself perished. He made alliances with wildlings not out of love, but out of necessity. He saw a future the others refused to see. But fear blinds. Fear poisons. To Alliser Thorne, Jon Snow was a threat to centuries of tradition. To Bowen Marsh, he was a commander who overreached. To Ollie, he was the man who shook hands with his family's murderers. They didn't see the future Jon saw. They only saw betrayal. So they gave him death, resurrection and reckoning. But Jon's story didn't end in blood. In the aftermath, Melisandre, the Red Woman, resurrected him. By the flames of R'hllor, Jon Snow opened his eyes once more. He had died for his duty. Now, he lived for a new purpose. His first act, justice. Jon executed Alliser Thorne. He hanged Bowen Marsh. And when he looked into Ollie's eyes as the boy took his last breath, you could see the weight of sorrow in Jon's soul. He had been killed by his own. He had paid the ultimate price. And so, he gave up the title of Lord Commander. He said it himself. My watch is ended. The meaning of betrayal. So, why did the Night's Watch betray Jon Snow? Because he chose compassion over tradition. Because he chose unity over fear. Because he refused to follow broken laws in a broken world. They couldn't understand that the old ways were dead. They clung to the past, while Jon tried to save the future. His death was a symbol of how hard it is to change the world when the world refuses to change. But Jon Snow's legacy did not end at the Wall. He fought the White Walkers. He faced the Night King. He helped save the world. And he learned that sometimes, the greatest leaders are the ones who never wanted power. The aftermath. After the war, after Daenerys, after the Iron Throne melted into nothing, Jon Snow returned to where it all began. To the Wall, to the North, to the people he once saved, and who once killed him. But he didn't return as Lord Commander. He didn't return as king. He returned as a man who had seen too much, lost too much, and carried the weight of too many ghosts. The Night's Watch was once his family. But families betray, families destroy, and sometimes, families kill their own. Jon Snow rode beyond the Wall, not to escape, but to find peace. Maybe beyond the snows and ruins, in the silence of the true North, he could find something the Wall never gave him. Belonging. In the end, Jon Snow was never meant for thrones or titles. He wasn't the prince that was promised. He was the sacrifice, betrayed by those he called brothers, killed for doing what was right. And yet, he rose. In a world of fire and ice, Jon Snow proved that honor means standing alone. Even when it